There we go. So today the topic is letting go. Let me tell you a story about this little boy who was watching his father, a minister, write his Sunday talk. The little boy said to him, "How do you know what to say, Papa?" His father replied, "Well, God tells me." The little boy thought about that for a minute and he said, "Well, then why do you keep crossing things out?" Well, don't we all? Don't we all at one time or another, maybe more often than that even, don't we all cross out or erase the intuitive ideas that come to us as solutions to our problems, our challenges? So let me give you an example through one of my own past experiences. Although I no longer play tennis, it's still my favorite sport, and I love to watch tennis matches on television or in person when I can. So some years back, I was really excited about watching the finals of Wimbledon, tennis in Great Britain, in July. And it's one of the four major slam tournaments of the year. The women's final was touted to be a world-class match, which they always are, actually, between two young American women, which is not always the case. One of them was Venus Williams, and the other was her younger sister, Serena. If you're into tennis at all, those are very familiar names to you. And although they had played each other thousands of times as children and dozens of times as professional players, that match in the finals of a Grand Slam was a new experience for both of them. And you can imagine someone that you're very close to, a sibling, and now being across the net from them and vying for a very prestigious win. So not only was it the first time they had ever met in the finals at Wimbledon, but it was the first time they had met when Serena, the younger one, was ranked #1 in the world, even though her older sister Venus was ranked #1 in the tournament. Isn't that an interesting setup for excitement? And for the first time, Serena could be seen during the crossovers sitting and studying handwritten notes, searching perhaps for solutions to problems that she was encountering on the court. Serena had not been known up until that time for her concentration or her focus on the court. Of the two sisters, she had been much more outgoing, much more interested in the antics and the comments from the crowd, much less introspective. But on this day, she was solution-oriented. And she was also the victor in 2 sets of that world-class tennis final. And aren't we all, at one time or another, solution-oriented, yes? When we decide to seek spiritual solutions to our problems, our challenges, our issues. So this month, this theme, what is this about a feel-good religion? During this month, I'll be addressing my remarks to the synchronicity between doing that, being solution-oriented, and the science of mind. Because as we've agreed before, truth is truth. Different sources are merely different channels of expression. So I want to talk about the application of the energy of spirit and how we can apply spiritual principles in the events of our lives. Because in the spiritual solution to every key problem is the key word, spiritual. When we're connected to the source of our creation, there's nothing that's impossible, nothing that's beyond our capabilities, and nothing that is withheld from us. You see, life gives us lessons, messages, Life gives us great clues. And the really intriguing thing about all of that is that these lessons, these clues, never stop until we get it or we walk away from it, whatever that issue is. So what are some of these lessons then, these clues that challenge us to seek solutions? Well, here's one: letting go of ego. I want to begin this series by paving the way to let Spirit in. How often we say we believe that Spirit knows the way. How often we agree that God can do anything, anytime, anywhere. How often we acknowledge that past problems have been resolved effortlessly and for the good of all concerned. But let a big fat problem crop up. And how often do we forget all those things I just said? How easy it is to slip right back into fear, right back into doubt, right back into pride, to anxiety, to judgment. And we hang on to those feelings, those thoughts. We get right out of our God self and we get right back into our ego self. The ego. Can't live with it, can't live without it. I know that sounds silly, but it's really true in a certain sense. For we cannot surrender, that is, let go and let God, when we're stuck in believing I have to do it myself. Or the old saying from when we were younger, "Mother, please, I'd rather do it myself." But we also cannot literally rid ourselves of all ego. It's a part of who and what we are. So what's the solution then? To learn to tame that ego so that it no longer dominates. For most of us, the ego represents what we have, what we do, and what others think of us. We need to learn to let go and allow a greater sense of self to emerge. A self that allows God to work through us. A self that becomes an instrument of peace and trust. When we bring Spirit into the presence of problems, problems dissipate and solutions emerge, because that's where we're putting our attention and our energy. Spirit knows itself, and itself is harmony and order and balance. So when we learn to let go of our ego, that tells us that we no longer have to do it ourselves, but rather to be a channel or an energy flow. Letting go of our ego, that ego that wants to make us better than somebody, but not good enough to be godly. Because when you're godly, who needs an ego? Our ego says. It's like the God in me says, smell the roses, feast your eyes on the magnificence of the flower unfolding. And my ego says, fertilize that plant, trim those suckers, cultivate that ground, and your rose will win the best of show at the fair. Remember, the ego represents what we have, what we do, and what others think of us. We need to learn to let that ego go and allow a greater sense of self to emerge. And the really fascinating thing about that is that when I look at the beauty of the flower and I reflect on its source, which is my source, and I am fully in the moment of that enjoyment, the energy emanating from me does what? It has a positive effect on that flower. So if you don't talk to your plants up until now, now's a good time to begin. If you don't appreciate the nature in your home and around your home, now's a good time to do that. And they will love you back, just like a puppy loves you back when you scratch its ears and rub its tummy. The same is true with all life, because there is that interconnectedness. So although we fertilize and we trim and we take these flowers inside as cut flowers and enjoy them, what we recognize is that we are fertilizing and trimming out of love and appreciation, rather than as a chore that must be done in order for the flower to emerge, because the flower is going to emerge regardless. And I have to brag on myself. For the first time since I've been raising orchids, I have finally had a Miltonia bloom in my presence rather than only when I bring it home from the store. You can bring a Miltonia home in full bloom and they look wonderful for about 3 days, and then those blooms drop, and often that plant never blooms again. And this one now is blooming for the 3rd time, and this last bloom stayed on the plant for almost a month. Oh,
So you've been talking.
I have been every morning, and I set it in the morning sunlight for its little pansy face to open up, because they have a little flat pansy face. They're darling. They're just darling orchids. Set it in the sun, but it's inside so that it's protected. And I talk to it every morning and tell it how beautiful it is and how much I appreciate it and how I know that it's working to do this. And I recognize that. And incidentally, the Phalaenopsis sitting next to it, which is also a homegrown bloom, is just going right along with the whole thing. And it's still blooming now. As the Miltonia begins to drop these blooms, there's another spike coming. And I've never had that happen with the Miltonia before either. So appreciating those things around you, both living and seemingly inert, that really aren't, is a wonderful way to recognize that this is not my ego speaking, this is my connection with the source of all energy, connecting with everything around me. So here's the second point I want to talk about. And that is the need for us to let go of the things that we drag around with us, even though they have no spiritual value, and they diminish us in countless ways. And one of those is grudges that we harbor against others. Boy, this may be as challenging as the judgment talk a couple weeks ago. You know, it's like the Hatfields and the McCoys. Remember that old story in the age-old grudge match? Like the Hatfields and the McCoys, we can seldom remember why we developed a grudge to begin with. But we carry it with us anyway. We look for ways to get back at somebody for something we can't even remember, or that they didn't even create. It's really a caustic way to live when you stop to think about it. There's an old Chinese proverb that says, if you're going to seek revenge, you'd better dig 2 graves. Instead, however, the spiritual solution to such an issue is, well, you know it well, it's forgiveness. In all of history, no progress has ever been made by hate or revenge. Individuals and civilizations who have used those kinds of tactics just don't survive their own methods. Sometimes the idea of forgiveness may seem like a cop-out or being wishy-washy. But I think Mark Twain said it in a way we can all take to heart when he said, "Forgiveness is the scent the violet makes on the heel that has crushed it." The one who forgives is the one who is strong and who stands in his or her own power. The one who forgives is the one who understands that God's way is to love and honor all creation without judgment or criticism. In the works of Joseph Campbell, he not only vividly brings to life the innumerable stories of life and living in varied and colorful civilizations, he also guides us into seeing how our current ideas, our ideologies, and our sociologies are impacted by the past. And that was one of the things I was saying earlier with regard to the family that spoke at Talk Story last night, the 3 generations represented there, plus their discussion of their family clear back to the birth of King Kamehameha. And of course, that's important to all of us here on Big Island because we celebrate King Kamehameha Day next Thursday. One of the things that Campbell challenges us to do is to participate joyfully in the sorrows of the world. He suggests that the first step to the knowledge of the highest divine is the wonder and the mystery of life, and that it's in the recognition of the nature of life and its glory in that character. Campbell says if you really want to help this world, what you will have to teach is how to live in it. To live in the joyful sorrow and the sorrowful joy of the knowledge of life as it is. And as you know, we talk constantly about, I can't change anything that's going on around me. The only thing I can change is what's going on within me and how I view what's going on around me. And as each person does that, and that begins to spread, then the change that I am, I begin to see. But not because I force it outside myself, because it's from the inside out. So here's another way of letting go and beginning to open up to this feel-good teaching of spirituality, and that is to get out of our past. As we seek spiritual solutions to our problems, of course we want to let go of our past, or as it's sometimes called dramatically, our story. Everyone has a story, and we've all known someone, or perhaps several someones, who tell their story every time we're within earshot. And it's not that we're inhospitable or uncaring, but in truth, when we, or they, whoever they are telling the story and retelling the story and telling it once again, where are we? We're living in the past, aren't we? And we're not our past. None of us is our past. We're our present, this moment, right now. Wayne Dyer likens that to a boat moving through the water. And he says, the bow of the boat slices through the water, and the boat leaves a wake in the water behind it. The wake is where the boat has been. But it's not there anymore. There is only a wake where it once was. The wake doesn't guide the boat. The wake doesn't drive the boat. The wake is not the boat. It's merely a sign of its former presence. Same with our past. Like the wake, It doesn't guide us. It certainly doesn't drive us. And it's not us any longer. It's merely a sign of our former presence. Carlos Castaneda, a prolific writer in the field of self-realization, tells this story about himself. He said, "One day, I finally realized that I no longer needed a personal history. So just like drinking, I gave it up. And for me," he said, "that's made all the difference." I think for many of us, dwelling in the past delays reaching the issues in our presence. In Science of Mind, we believe that those things in our past which serve and uplift us are things that we can choose to bring forward into the present. But those things that limit, that diminish, that restrict, or that sadden us can be released, let go of. We can do this slowly, with intensity, even painfully, if we choose. We can do it through psychotherapy, through rebirthing, through hypnosis, if we choose. Or we can do it by inviting the presence of God into our present. And by realizing that the present moment is truly all there really is. We simply embrace our past. And by that I mean accept it for what it was. Bless it for having provided the experience. And then release it. Let go of it. Toss it out of our consciousness. So this is one of the ways that we find spiritual solutions to problems that have been plaguing us for long periods of time. Those are three, then, of the things that we can let go of as we become more adept at finding spiritual solutions to our problems. Let go of ego, let go of grudges, let go of the past. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about invoking the presence, capital P, presence, into our lives on a regular and ongoing basis. Every Sunday morning here at our center, we begin with an opening affirmative prayer, don't we? And then that's followed by an opening song, such as the one we sang this morning. That's not by chance or by accident. The affirmative prayers that are done, the music that we use. Every moment that we're in this room, those words are defining what follows in this service and in this ministry. Every moment that we're in this room, we're aware that that presence resides within us. That this is a sacred place. We make it a sacred place by our presence and our inviting the presence of God in with us. That divine spirit, that creative intelligence, that life force of the universe. And whenever we put our attention on it, we attract it through our lives. It's already there, but we awaken to it. We attract its action, its energy through us. It's dynamic, and so are we when that's unfolding. It's ceaseless, and so are we when that's unfolding. That's intelligent, and so are we as it unfolds by means of us. It's not, however, an exclusive or selective presence. You can take it with you when you leave here. You can be connected with it in prayer treatment, in meditation, when you, I was going to say mow the lawn. Kim has a lot of lawn. When David mows the lawn. When my gardener mows the lawn, because I don't mow mine either. But I think we're the only two that have lawn.
He mows.
All right. Okay, so there you go. Thank you. And you can be connected with it in meditation or prayer. Also, when you cook a meal, when you hold a child in your arms. Every place is a sacred place when we've invited the presence into it. What's sometimes known as bad or negative, evil, are simply low, slow energies where the presence has not been invited in. Albert Einstein once said, "Nothing happens until something moves." When we invite the presence, which is a high, fast energy, dynamic, ceaseless, intelligent, unlimited, things begin to happen. Am I saying that God doesn't exist everywhere? No. I'm saying that God exists where its presence is recognized. Remember, what you think about expands. It's done unto you as you believe. That's why it's so important to stay in a state of living in the presence, being consciously aware of that in and through self. That's why it's so important to pay attention to your thoughts, to watch what you watch on TV and in the movies, to be particular about what you read. Your thoughts are powerful. Your thoughts are your power. And your body and its actions are reactions to those thoughts. So while up until now I've been talking about letting go of thought, idea, belief that doesn't serve you, now I want to talk about what you are letting go out into the universe with each and every thought, word, and action. For example, I believe in peace, not war. I believe in love, not hate. I believe in fairness, not favoritism. My thoughts and my actions must then be focused on peace and love and fairness. That must occur for me when I'm driving the car, talking to you or anybody else, when I'm working or playing, and even when I'm watching activities like TV or movie or sports, etc. In order for me to be true to my beliefs, to be in sync with my higher self, to be living in the presence, I must live those concepts, those spiritual principles, in all the events of my life. That's how I stay connected with God, my source and substance. Is it work? You bet it is. And you know it is. But we also know that when we bring spirit into the presence of our problems, a spiritual solution is on the way. A spiritual solution that serves our highest and best good. Our spiritual solution that brings comfort and peace. A spiritual solution that changes us for the better and for all time. And what changes us for the better individually changes the planet for the better collectively. David Hawkins, in that fascinating book, Power versus Force, reminds us that every act or decision that you make supports life. Every act or decision that you make that supports life supports all life, including our own. The ripples we create eventually return to us. So we're such an integral part of all that is. And one of the things I want to share with you in closing is another statement that David Hawkins makes in that book. He talks about the various levels of consciousness in humankind and how we affect each other. He believes and has demonstrated the effects of this scientifically, that we ourselves can be the spiritual solutions to countless problems now existing on planet Earth. He lists dozens of powerful positive patterns that, as we put our attention on them, have a positive impact on others all around the world. His work has demonstrated that the spiritual connection made by one of us at the level of peace, love, forgiveness, and inner joy counterbalances the shame, guilt, apathy, despair, fear, and anger of hundreds of thousands of others all over the planet. So the spiritual solution to problems not only works in your own life, but as you apply it locally, it expands out globally. Without even leaving this room or your own room, you are and can be a force for good. No surprise, though, really. After all, we are all one, and we are one with the one mind. And so it is.